All right, new year, new decade. So everything's on fire. That's not great. All right. So a quick note before we get into things. I am probably going to be changing the name of this channel from Captain Haywire to my real name, which is James Finlay, because I write poetry and do a bunch of other stuff under my real name. So I guess for the sake of consistency of branding, it makes sense to just have kind of one name across everything, and that'll be James Finlay. So if by the next video I put out you see James Finlay popping up in your subscription feed rather than Captain Haywire, it's still me, same content. Cool.
So as I'm sure you're all aware, we have kicked off the decade with my country, Australia, being very on fire. And that's not great. In fact, I have spent way more time being in complete disbelief that the world is actually ending like we knew it was going to start doing, than really anything else, which is not how I wanted this to start. I wanted this to be a decade where I'm motivated, I'm optimistic, I'm hopeful, but it hasn't really been that way. It's been hard. But then, of course, if you saw my response to the Amazon fires last year, you will know that I don't like to take things like this lying down. There is heart to be taken here. So the Australian government right now has really dropped the ball big time on this. Scott Morrison, our Prime Minister, was on a family holiday in Hawaii when the fires started. That on its own is not a bad thing. People should be allowed to take holidays. However, it was either his second or third time of leave for that year. And he has spent as much time on leave as what he has in Parliament, which is definitely not a good look. It took him a little longer than we wanted to for him to actually come back, which George W. Bush made that exact same mistake with Hurricane Katrina. They've taken just that little bit too long to not be on holidays anymore. It's taken our government too long to do anything. Firefighters, volunteers, because I guess there's a lot of them. We can't pay them all for some reason. We can pay a military, but we can't pay firefighters, and then we get the military to help the firefighters, so I don't know. But worse than that, any volunteer firefighters who are unemployed don't have fighting fires as an approved activity, meaning that they're still expected to look for work while they're fighting fires and can't actually claim unemployment allowances while they're, defending lives and property, which is kind of shitty. The government has also started running ads to show people that they are trying to do something, which has not been taken well. People have said that they felt like they're being sold to at a funeral, which I think is a pretty fair assessment. And the military have also said that those ads actually contravene laws that are supposed to keep the military politically impartial, which I did not know about those laws, and I'm very glad we have them, because if you have a military that's allowed to side with one political party over another, that's how you get coups. But what has happened is that while our government has been dropping the ball, Australians across the country and people around the world have pulled their resources together to make sure that people have got what they need. People have been putting care packages together for firefighters, as well as care packages for people who've lost homes and been displaced. And this has all happened outside of normal government channels, which is what anarchists would call a pretty big dual power structure. It's not a permanent structure, and it is in response to a natural disaster. I mean, a greatly exacerbated by humans natural disaster, but, which means that we are actually capable of pulling ourselves together outside of the normal structures if we need to, which is interesting. It's very interesting, because I have a feeling we're going to need to do that a bit this decade, given that we pretty much have 10 years to try and get some shit done, or else everything's going to just keep getting worse and be like this forever, and we're never going to pull out of this tailspin. But that's the thing. If you can't get the people you want elected, that's not the end of politics. there are things to be done. I was actually talking to my sister, who was pretty upset about all this. I was just trying to talk her through where we could find reasons for hope in all this. And that, I think, is where it is. As always, where these videos end up, what do? Well, if you have money, please give to the people who are fighting bushfires at the moment. If you can't, find ways of giving money to people who need it, and put those links in front of people who you know have money if you yourself don't have money. My wife was chatting to one of her friends not too long ago and found out that there's actually programs where you can raise seedlings into, sort of young saplings and get them so that they're ready to be planted for the replantation process. Because, as I'm sure you can imagine, we lost a lot of trees. In fact, we've lost enough trees that half of our annual carbon emissions have already literally gone up in smoke. So we should probably plant some trees to balance that out. So if you're able to raise young seedlings into saplings, that's something worth looking into. And join the Extinction Rebellion, for crying out loud. I know people have got criticisms about XR, but what are you going to do? Start up your own, protest organization that's completely unaffiliated with them and does their own thing? I mean, that would still be helpful, but, I kind of feel like we need to concentrate our resources a little bit if we're actually going to get some proper momentum going. We apparently only need 3.5% of the population engaged in protest, which that's a shit ton of people, but, if there's one movement we can all get behind, then, we'll say the one same message the most times, and that's the thing that tends to win elections. It's whoever can say the fewest words the most times. So we just got to do the same thing, and I think Extinction Rebellion have got a pretty nice little succinct message, and so I think we just need as many people saying that as we can. So join XR, get out there, protest and shit. There's a hashtag that I've started using in a few places that I think is really important and good to sort of keep people focused and positive and motivated, which is hashtag we've got work to do. Start talking about stuff. Find ways of donating money outside of ordinary government channels. And if you have any means of influencing who makes up the government, looking at you, the United States, you've got the big one coming up this year. Even if you're not in the US, anything you can do that might help someone like Bernie Sanders, and by someone like Bernie Sanders, I mean Bernie Sanders, become the Democratic nominee and then eventually the next president, that is not going to save anything on its own. It's going to take a lot more than that. However, he's the only politician who is looking at empowering people to do the kind of stuff that I'm talking about now. And symbolically, that would be huge, because while the symbols themselves, the symbols being the governments, have a habit of failing, and even though people like Trump and Boris Johnson end up getting elected into the positions of being national symbols, those symbols do mean something. They change the way that people view the world and how much hope and how broadly people can think. At the moment, we have individuals who people get overly focused on, at least in the UK and the US. Over here in Australia, we've had a guy who's been just very quietly dismantling a lot of things. He's finally messed up enough that people are looking at him now. What I'm saying is, people who are those national symbols are not as important as they make themselves out to be, but they are still important on some kind of psychological and spiritual, almost kind of a way. If Bernie Sanders won, I think that would be a really great beacon of hope, because it would be the man of the people overthrowing the machine, or at least it's a David and Goliath battle, okay? And if David wins this one, it's going to mean a lot, because it's going to show a lot of people the kind of stuff I'm talking about now, that people are actually capable. People are actually capable of achieving things outside of the usual channels of power. And we only have 10 years to get things done. And so we need some people who actually have some power, i.e. heads of state, who are able to implement some actual tax policy to hold those 100 companies or so who are contributing to the vast majority of climate change to account, make sure that they're taxed properly and that those taxes go into mitigating the effects of climate change. For somewhere about $300 billion, I think we could pause climate change for long enough that we could actually start pulling ourselves together. We won't be able to get that out of the people who have that money unless we have people who, as heads of state, who are able to impose taxes and laws, taking that money from those people. So there's only one person, I believe, who is actually likely to do that anywhere in the world, and that is Bernie Sanders. So if you're a US citizen, do whatever you can. Become a member of the Democratic Party so you can vote in the primaries. If you're not, propaganda. Hashtags, memes, whatever you got. Because the media is not talking, hasn't been talking a lot about Bernie Sanders until very recently. When they do talk about him, I'm sure it's going to go really sour as soon as they find any little bit of dirt. You remember, you are a micro media channel. And because you're a micro media channel, just keep putting that message through, because we need to get the right people in power so that we can get some of that big stuff happening. But like I also said, and this is also the message of Bernie Sanders' campaign, is it's not just about those big structures. We have power as well. We have been funding the fireys, not the government, us, we the people. A lot of terrible things have already happened this year, and it's been nothing but bad news, and we're only 5 days in now. We've already got a good proof of concept for people power. The people who are supposed to be in charge aren't doing what they're supposed to do. So it's like Greta Thunberg keeps saying, we're the adults. You know, it sucks. It's scary. People are going to die. There's no way around that. People are dying right now, and people are going to continue dying because of how awful everything is. And that's why if we don't act now, like, even if it fails, I don't want to have to look my kids in the eye knowing that I didn't do anything. Even if it all goes to shit, I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and say I did all I could. I don't know about you. The kids are now the adults, and the people need to become the government. And the people need to put themselves in charge. And who's the people? We the people. That is the hope in the middle of these fires. This is not the desperate hope that I was pushing in my video about the Amazon fires last year. This is a different kind. This proves we can do it. So go out there, get to work. Hashtag we've got work to do. So once again, going to be rebranding this channel. So if by the next video you don't see Captain Haywire anymore, you see James Finlay. I'm James Finlay. That's me. Stay safe out there. Take care of the people in your life. We got work to do. And until next time, much love. Just wanted to give a quick shout out to my friend Catherine. I've helped her edit her last couple of videos. And of course, if you want to support me on Patreon or check out the poetry, music, and films that I make, there's a link to my website down in the description.